Listening Library presents Alice Through the Looking Glass, adapted by Kari Sutherland, read for you by Lucy Rayner.
Prologue. 1868, Strait of Malacca. Boom! Boom! Cannon fire exploded in the dark, stormy sky. With a howl, the wind pushed the Wonder, as though helping it dodge the missiles. Rushing along its damaged deck, sailors secured loose lines and fought to keep the clipper afloat. The moon broke through the clouds, illuminating the three large Malayan junks bearing down on the Wonder, their cannons blazing. Above the decks, their red sails cut the sky like shark fins, and their masts flew black flags, broken only by a wicked devil's face. These pirates would show no mercy. After cresting an enormous wave, the clipper slipped into a trough, briefly sparing its sailors the sight of their pursuers. But the view ahead was no better. The jagged outline of an island reared up in front of the Wonder. Rings of broken rock shoals, perfect for grounding ships, surrounded it. His arms straining, the helmsman wrestled with the steering wheel as cannonballs whistled through the air. Debris rained down on him, shattering the chronometer. "Sir!" the helmsman shouted to the first mate. "We've lost the clock! We cannot reckon our position through the shoals!" The first mate braced himself as a geyser of water splashed the deck. Scanning the deadly outcroppings ahead of the clipper, he felt a rush of despair. It was no use. The Wonder was being herded into a trap. He turned to a figure behind him. "Captain, we must surrender!" the first mate cried. "Or we shall all be lost!" Alice Kingsley stepped out of the shadows, her face fierce and determined. She had not worked so hard or travelled so far to lose everything, and she would not give in to flea-infested pirates. "I'm not sure surrendering my father's ship guarantees survival, Mr. Phelps," she said calmly. Alice glanced down at the sextant in her hand, measuring the angle of the moon, and then eyed the barrier shoals ahead. A thrill ran through her as she spotted something her first mate had missed. "Dead ahead! Full sail!" she cried. Her crew stared at her in disbelief. Had their captain gone mad? Mr. Phelps tried to reason with her. "Captain, the shoals! The ship will founder! That's impossible!" "You know my views on that word, Mr. Phelps." Alice shot him a stern look. Her father had taught her long ago that anything was possible, and Alice's own adventures had proven that time and again. The first mate's shoulders sagged, but he nodded and turned to yell at the crew. They scrambled to unfurl the sails fully, and the clipper sped toward the shallows surrounding the island. "Hard to starboard, Harper!" Alice shouted at the helmsman. "To starboard? We'll surely capsize!" Harper cried. "Exactly, Harper. Exactly," Alice said. Her eyes were lit with certainty. Harper had never known his captain to be wrong, so he pulled the ship to the right, gritting his teeth. The Wonder began to tip to the side, even as it barreled toward the rocks. This has to work, Alice thought. Her mad plan was their only hope. But as Alice calculated their trajectory, she realized it wouldn't be enough. Looking skyward, she spotted a young sailor struggling to unfurl the top sail. "Secure yourselves, men!" Alice called as she raced to a halyard. "We're going to roll!" Grabbing hold of the rope, she slashed it with her sword. Alice's eyes shone as the rope lifted her off the deck and carried her to the top of the Wonder. She danced through the rigging and severed the lines keeping the topsail closed. With a whoosh, the sail unfurled and snapped full in the raging wind. "Here we go," Alice thought, as the Wonder leaned fully horizontal and the mast she clung to dipped into the frigid ocean waves. The keel of the ship scraped along a sandy shoal. Then a wave lifted it and pushed it beyond the barrier into calmer waters. Alice scrambled to reach the mainsails and used her sword to cut them. The sails slumped like weary travellers. Without the full force of the storm behind it, the Wonder swung upward, righting itself. Pushing her wet hair out of her face, Alice looked back. A fearsome grin spread across her features. The larger Malayan ships had splintered into pieces on the shoals. She'd done it! She'd saved her ship, her cargo, and her crew. Relief bled through her, untying the knot she'd been carrying in her stomach. A cheer rose from her crew as she slid down to the deck. Were it not for her, they would be dead, and they knew it. Stepping forward, Mr. Phelps bowed his head in admiration. The only way to achieve the impossible is to believe it is possible, Alice told him, thinking of her father's ever-optimistic spirit. She fished her beloved pocket watch from her cloak and gazed at its inscription. Charles Kingsley, Esquire. If only he could be by her side. Still, she could imagine him looking down at her with pride. A splatter of rain on her cheek brought Alice back to the present. She stepped across the deck and hung her pocket watch in front of the broken chronometer. "I trust this will guide us home," she said. As her crew turned the Wonder toward London, Alice added softly under her breath, "It always has." Chapter 1. 4 months later. London. The Wonder sailed up the Thames into the heart of London. Lining the shores like sentinels, factories and warehouses crowded together along the river, the streets between them twisting away around tight corners. Collecting her things, Alice moved about the captain's cabin. She tucked her father's watch into her coat pocket, even though it had stopped working a week earlier. Ever since her father had passed away, Alice had carried the pocket watch with her everywhere, almost like a talisman. While its hands were sadly frozen still, it made her feel closer to him. She scanned her cabin one last time, then headed up to watch the Wonder pull alongside a pier. Satisfied that her crew was properly directing the dock workers unloading the Wonder's precious cargo, she turned her attention to the wharf. A slender figure in a grey cloak caught her eye. With a cry of joy, Alice darted down the gangplank. "Mother!" Alice called as she ran toward her. Flinging her arms around her mother, she pulled her into a tight embrace. Helen Kingsley returned the hug a bit more stiffly, softly patting Alice on the back. She would never get used to her younger daughter's enthusiastic displays of affection, but she was glad to have her back. Every day she'd been gone had been filled with a lifetime of worry. "Well, here you are. Finally," Helen said as she stepped away. Alice drew a breath to launch into stories of her exploits. She had so much to tell her mother, but she stopped short as an unfamiliar man approached them. He was young and handsome. His wavy blonde hair was neatly combed to the side, and his eyes were a startling blue. As Alice studied his simple, clean suit for a clue, she noticed the insignia stamped on a briefcase he carried. So he was from the firm, here to check up on her cargo. "You and the Wonder have been expected a year, Miss Kingsley," he said. Alice blushed guiltily, although she felt a twinge of annoyance that he hadn't addressed her as captain. It was tiresome to return to England, where her position suddenly eroded to that of a young, unmarried woman. In every port abroad, she'd been greeted with far more respect. Straightening her shoulders, she faced the stranger. "There were complications," she said. She doubted anyone else could have achieved what she had, and Lord Ascot would be pleased with her discoveries, despite the delay. "I dare say the cargo will account for time," the man responded quickly, noting Alice's stiffness. "I'm James Harcourt, ma'am, clerk to the firm." He held...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?